Hi everyone. So this video will take you through the first page of the Chapter 6 test review. I'll probably split it into multiple videos so it's not super long. So this first section, expanded and simplified, this is all just doing the math. Okay, this is PEMDAS here. Anytime we're expanding and simplifying, we're using PEMDAS. And PEMDAS means that we start by doing the exponents. Okay, so the first thing I would do in this first one is the squaring, and that's where FOIL is going to come in. So I'm going to write this thing out as 9 times t minus 5 times t minus 5. And then I would multiply my two parentheses together, okay, and that's where I'm doing kind of that double distribution. So I'm going to take the t and distribute it over here, and that's going to give me a t squared. T times negative 5 is negative 5t. In the middle here, negative 5 times t is negative 5t. And then my last ones here, negative 5 and negative 5 make positive 25. And then just keep in mind that you do still have that 9 sitting out in front there. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is just take these middle terms and put them together. You may have been able to combine that all into one step. Okay. And then my very last step will be to take that 9 and distribute it all through here. So that's going to end up looking like this. 9t squared minus 90t. Let's see, 9 times 25, that's going to be 225. So plus 225. Okay. But biggest mistake I see with this problem is people just forgetting that that 9 doesn't get distributed until the end. We don't want to end up squaring the 9, okay, because the way this is written, the square only applies to the parentheses, all right? And so if you do the 9 into the parentheses first, you end up squaring it, and you don't want to square it. Okay. So let's keep all of that in mind when we look at number 2, that we're really paying close attention to order of operations, which means I'm going to do my squaring first. Okay, so this is going to become 3 times a plus b times a plus b minus 4 times a minus b times a minus b. So my very first step is just to duplicate those parentheses. Okay, now I'm going to distribute just like I did up here. And this might be a little bit new for you. Okay, I wouldn't stress about this too much, but so here a times a is a squared. When I go to do a times b, that just gives me an ab. Now my next step is this, b times a, and I could technically write that as ba, but ba and ab are really the same thing. And I always try to write them in the same order so that I can identify them as like terms. So when I do b times a, I'm really going to write that down as another ab. And then b times b gives me b squared. And that chunk is still in parentheses with a 3 out front. Okay? And then I have a minus 4. I'm opening another parenthesis, and this is where I'm going to do this set of FOIL. So once again, a times a squared. This time I'm doing a times negative b, so that's negative ab. Negative b times a, and again, I'm going to flip the order of the a and the b because I'm allowed to, and that way it'll match this one. So it is still negative, so that would be another negative ab. And then just be careful here. Negative b times negative b, the two negatives make a positive b squared. Okay, I'm going to condense what's inside my parentheses before I go any farther. So I can put these two things together, and I can put these two things together. Just like normal with FOIL, my middle terms are like terms. So this is now a squared. Remember, this is like 1ab and 1ab, so that makes 2ab plus b squared minus 4, and then same thing over here, a squared. This is minus 1 and minus 1, so altogether that makes minus 2ab plus b squared. Now I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 3 and the negative 4. And when I distribute that 4, I do have to make sure I keep that negative sign right with it. So when I distribute the 3 through here, I'm going to rewrite this over here. I end up with 3a squared. 3 times 2 gives me 6ab plus 3b squared. And then here I'm going to get a negative 4a squared. Right here is where the big mistake tends to happen. Negative 4 times negative 2ab gives me positive 8ab. And negative 4 times b squared gives me negative 4b squared. And I'll go ahead and combine those all in just a minute. Okay, so now I'm looking for my like terms here. I've got a 3a squared minus a 4a squared, so I get negative 1. Where can I fit this in? I'm going to do this. This is good. So negative 1a squared, or just negative a squared. I have a 6ab and an 8ab, which all together make 14ab. And then I have a 3b squared minus a 4b squared, so I get a minus 1b squared. And this thing here, after all of that combining and simplifying, that was really a test of your algebra skills there. This thing would be your final answer. Okay? So I know that got to be kind of a mess, but this is where you should end up on that one. Okay. A 20 by 36 picture is to be surrounded by a frame W inches wide. We're used to this question by now. Just a quick sketch for you if you still need it. Here's my picture that's maybe 20 by 36. Here's my frame around the outside. Okay, and it is W inches wide all the way around. So when I go to do the length of this frame, it is from here to here is 36. And then I have a W here and a W here. So that total length down here would be 36 plus 2W. And when I want this length, same idea. We've got 20 inches in the middle there with a W on either side. So this side would be 20 plus 2W. Okay. If I want area, I'm going to multiply those two things together. So I'm going to go 36 plus 2W times 20 plus 2W. Okay. To multiply those two things together, because even though it doesn't technically say it, I know that on your test it's going to want you to simplify this thing. So we're going to go ahead and multiply using FOIL. So 36 times 20. Let's see, that's going to be 720. 36 times 2W is 72W. 2W times 20 is 40W. And 2W times 2W is 4W squared. Okay, and when I go to write my final answer here, again, I've mentioned this in class before, but just to get in the habit, I'm going to put it in standard form. So I'm going to start with my 4W squared here. Then I'm going to combine these two. So 72 plus 40 is 112. And then plus 720 on the end. And this would be my expression for the area. Okay, and that's it. So now it says if the width of the frame is 4 inches, what is the total area? Really all this is telling me is that W is equal to 4. So I'm going to do 4 times 4 squared plus 112 times 4 plus 720. And I would, if I were you, I would put this all into your calculator in one step so we don't worry about accidentally mixing up order of operations. Okay, so I would go 4 times 4 squared plus 112 times 4 plus 720, and I get 1,232. And technically that would be square inches because it's measuring area. Okay. All right, let's look at number 4. A bread recipe calls for a rectangular pan 9 by 13. We want to put the same recipe in a circular pan. It should say that the pans are the same depth, but we won't worry about that. To the nearest inch, what should the radius of the circular pan be? Okay, so here's the idea, is we have this rectangular pan, right, that is 9 by 13. And then we have this round pan. And we want to be able to fit the same amount of stuff in here as we do in here, okay? So really what we're talking here is area. Well, I know how to find the area of this guy. Area of this guy is just 9 times 13, which is 117. Area of the circle, because I don't know the radius, but I can go ahead and say that I know the area of any circle is pi r squared. And I know I want these two things to be equal to each other, okay? So I'm going to set this up as an equation. I'm going to say pi r squared needs to equal 117. And then we want to think about how to solve for r. Well, the first thing I would do is get rid of that pi. That pi is just like any other number. So I would divide by pi, divide by pi. I am going to have to use decimals here. I end up with r squared equals 37.24. And then to solve from there, I would take a square root. Now, normally at this stage of the game, I'd be yelling at you to remember that you have two possible answers. Okay, the square root of 37.24 is 6.10. Okay. The problem here is the negative answer wouldn't make sense, right? Normally we would say it's plus or minus 6.1, but because we're talking about a radius, we can't have a negative radius, okay? So I am just going to stick with my positive answer here, and I believe it says to the nearest inch. So I'm taking that 6.10 and approximating it to about 6 inches. Okay, I'm just rounding to the nearest whole number there. Okay, so if I had a 6-inch radius pan, I should be able to fit the same amount of stuff in there that I did in here. Okay. Okay, completing the square. Let's see if we remember some completing the square here. First thing we always do with completing the square is move this number on the end out of the way. Okay, so now I'm looking at an equation that says y minus 5 equals x squared plus 4x. Okay, and I probably should have written this off to the side because I'm going to be squeezing it in now. Now the idea is we want to put another number in right here. Okay, and remember that to get to that magic number, we take this middle number and divide it by 2, and then take that number and square it and add that on right here. Okay, so I'm adding a 4. But I'm not allowed to do that just randomly in an equation. I can't just come along and add a 4 without also adding a 4 over here. Okay, so I have to do this and this at the same time. So now that left side of my equation, when I combine negative 5 with the 4, becomes y minus 1 equals, and then this guy here is a perfect square trinomial, and we want to try to write it back as a binomial squared so that this thing will end up in vertex form. And remember, we've kind of just talked about how for right now, the best way we know to do this is just to steal this number right here. Okay, this is the number that's going to end up inside my parentheses right here. So this would be an x plus 2 squared. And if you foiled this thing back out, you would get x squared plus 4x plus 4. And then if you move the 1 over to the other side, you would get back to the 5. Okay, so just a quick kind of check for you that this thing would in fact turn back into this original equation. But this is now in vertex form. Okay. Oh, and then it also says to identify the vertex of this guy. You just set him there.
She paper clips this stuff. It just, a day like today, look at that guy.
Right.
There's the other
Perfect. Thank you.
package. I don't know if I got, no, I don't have anything for you there.
Thank you. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So vertex for this equation, remember this is h and this is k. In the equation form, the numbers look opposite from what they really are. So this plus 2 really represents a negative 2 when you're pulling the number out as the vertex, okay? This minus 1 would really be a positive 1. So this parabola would have a vertex at negative 2 comma 1. And a really great way to check yourself at this point would be to go into your y equals on your calculator and graph this original equation. So I'm going to graph x squared plus 4x plus 5. And this is how I'm going to check, first of all, that I got my vertex form correct and that I pulled the vertex out correctly. So when I graph, you will see that my vertex is at negative 2, positive 1. Okay? So you can check that on the calculator and make sure that you got it right. But it should be, you follow the completing the square procedure, here you go, and then pull the numbers out opposite from what they look like in the equation. Okay, I kind of invaded my space here for number 6, so I may take 6 over here. Now the thing about number 6 is, remember how back here the first thing we did was subtract the 5? This one in number 6 doesn't have a number over there, so I can just start the completing the square piece right away. It's x squared minus 6x. So I can start right away with knowing that I need to put a number right here, okay? And I'm going to get there by doing negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 squared would give me positive 9, okay? And when I add that 9, I'm going to add that 9 over to the y as well. Even though there's not anything else over there with the y, the 9 is going to end up being over there with the y. So this would end up looking like this. Y plus 9 equals, and then here's my perfect square trinomial again that I want to write as a binomial squared. Okay? And the way I can get to an x squared minus 6x plus 9 is with a negative 3. Okay? Again, just stealing this number right here. Okay? Excuse me. So there's my completing the square. Okay, y plus 9 equals x minus 3 squared. And that gets me to a vertex of, here's your h, here's your k, opposite from what they look like in the equation. So this would be a positive 3 and a negative 9. Okay. And again, if I really wanted to make sure, I could type in that original equation, which was just x squared, let's see, minus 6x, delete the rest of that. So x squared minus 6x in my calculator, graph. Oh, you know what, I've got my window kind of shrunk here. I'm going to do zoom 6 to get me back to a standard window. And I probably won't take the time to count this out, but I just want to make sure that it looks about right. So positive 3, negative 9 as the placement for your vertex. That seems about right. Okay? All right, so that does it for this first page. I will go ahead and get a second video going for the second page.